Hi, this is Carlos Cousins, and this is a sentence completion question that, like all sentence completion questions, is worried about your familiarity with the vocab and the answer choices provided. Now, what I recommend that you do before you focus on the vocab, though, is that you look for clues in the sentence provided to try to orient what type of words we're looking for. So, important words are having however, for example, in the middle of a sentence, um, or though, despite this, although at the beginning, and we have though here. And these sorts of words are important because they allow us to set a criterion that says that whatever idea is introduced on the first half of the sentence and the halves of the sentence here that I'm talking about are clauses divided by a comma. So here, for example, though initially controversial would be an idea that it's going to be inherently different or oppositional to the idea introduced by the second half of the sentence. So in this case, that Becker's research is now universally accepted as the blank for all subsequent blank of Supreme Court behavior. For this sort of problem, we're thinking of the idea as it relates to the subject of the sentence, of course. So here we're dealing with Becker's research. So whatever the first half of the sentence says about Becker's research, say it's positive, it's going to be the opposite on the second half. So let's say here negative. So this is the first criterion that I'm worried about. And you can go ahead and on the exam use this notation if you find it useful, just to keep in mind that you're looking for a pair of words that is going to make a contrast between both halves of the sentence here. So let's go ahead and see. For this particular sentence, those pairs of words have to satisfy the criterion that Becker's research is no longer controversial, since that's the idea that is introduced on the first half of the sentence, and we're using the word though, which is one of the key words I was mentioning. The second criterion, of course, is going to be the meaning of each of these words and whether or not that makes sense in context. So let's go ahead and see which pairs of words satisfy both of these criteria. First pair here is standard investigations. So a standard is an example, something that you can go back to. So though initially controversial, Becker's research is now universally accepted as a standard. It makes sense because it's now going to be exemplary of all subsequent, and the next word we're using is investigations of Supreme Court behavior. So this is a noun. It could have been any other noun that makes sense in the context. And investigation works fine. So this seems like a good option already. Let's go ahead and consider the others. Though initially controversial, Becker's research is now universally accepted as a benchmark, so very similar idea to standard, in fact this is the exact same thing, for all subsequent misconceptions of Supreme Court behavior. Well, the problem here is in meaning. So again, we're using a noun, and there's no reason why we couldn't have a noun like this, other than the fact that you wouldn't be setting a misconception, which is a conception that is in error. You wouldn't have an erroneous idea of what the Supreme Court's behavior is set as a benchmark or as a standard as an example. So that doesn't make sense. This next, because it doesn't satisfy the second criterion. This next option here, debutante and studies. So though initially controversial, Becker's research is now universally accepted as the debutante for all subsequent studies of Supreme Court behavior. So debutante here means that beginner, and it is an adjective. So because we have the here, what you're looking for in this space here is a noun. So that should already show you why this word doesn't work out. But more importantly, if it is universally accepted as beginner's work, then why would it be considered at all for all subsequent studies of the Supreme Court? That doesn't satisfy the meaning criterion at all. And if it is beginner's work, it likely is controversial. So that's an assumption, but it might not satisfy the first criterion either. This fourth option here, basis and didactics. So though initially controversial, Becker's research is now universally accepted as the basis for all subsequent didactics of Supreme Court behavior. Would work in that didactics are something that you teach, and the basis is, again, like standard and benchmark, something that you go back to. But standard and benchmark are better words in that they're examples. They're not basis. Basis is very vague here. So that's why this isn't the best option. And this would end up being it. And contention and analysis, well, you're not really making a contention anymore. If you're, again, a much better idea is to have something that can be set as an example. I hope that helped with this problem. And happy prepping.